很近很重要，你离我近很重要。
不要在这里。
对对对，这样很重要。
有没有看到 test 的字？Okay, let me try another. Testing but nothing is working.
Good afternoon, everyone. It looks like we are about time. Okay. So I'm Howard Lee, the GDD Programs Director in ICANN, mainly helping all the registries and registrars in the East Asia region. So we are glad to have everyone to come to us this afternoon, probably after a very good lunch and maybe having a little heavy-headed. But we want you to, be happy with our session. Hopefully our session can energize you up to get the afternoon being a fruitful and successful, session for you. Let me invite our distinguished panelists to be with us for this afternoon session. First will be Antonia Chu, Ms. Antonia Chu from Alibaba Cloud. She's the Senior Policy Advisor at Alibaba. Right? And second, we will invite our CTO of ICANN, John Crane. John? Yes. Yes, we should. Yes. John is our Senior Vice President and our CTO. And third, we will invite Kelly Hardy. Yep. She's the SVP, Senior VP of Strategy and Development, IQ Global. Yeah. And the last one will be Alban Kwan, the Head of Corporate Development and Strategy Alliances, APAC CSC Global. Right, let's give them a round of applause. Okay. Have a seat. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Since we only have 4 microphones, so I will share with Antonia. So, all right. Long story short, let's cut to our main topics for this afternoon. It's actually mitigating the DNS abuse and enhancing the cybersecurity at the DNS level. It's the topic for today, because we all know there's a lot of different types of cybersecurities in the world today. And one of the things that we are mitigating them is the DNS abuse. All right, so in this session, we will have our distinguished guests to share that at the DNS level, how the global community to approach this issue in a multifaceted manner. And we will explain what DNS abuse is, how it impacts the cybersecurity, and as well as what ICANN and the community has done to cope with the challenge. And our panelists will also share the important data and global and regional initiatives about DNS abuse handling, and discuss how the APAC community here can further participate and contribute to this important work. Right? So we might, to start with some simple questions. I think the first one is for John and Kelly. So we would like you to give you a view on how the ICANN communities defines the DNS abuse, the term of DNS abuse, and how it differs from other cybersecurity threats. So should we have John to?
Okay,
go
I'll
first?
take the first stab at this. So DNS abuse is a term that is a little artificial in its nature. It's used to try and classify certain types of abuse on the internet that in some ways leverage domain names in the DNS or attack the DNS, and just put a definition around them so that we can agree that certain types of abuse, because there are many different types of abuse on the internet, are actually within the remit of the industry. So, we've classified basically 4 types of basic abuse. That's the use of domain names in botnets, which is about command and control. Phish, so phishing, farming, and malware distribution. And then we also say spam, because people always say, what about spam? And we say, well, yes, spam if it's used in those threat scenarios. So not spam trying to sell somebody some device. There we go, we're back again. Not somebody trying to sell you something that you just looked up on Amazon or somewhere else, and 5 seconds later you're getting emails about it. Not that kind of spam, but the ones that are in the abuse. So it's sort of an artificial construct to bound certain abuse types so that as an industry we can sit there and say these abuse types are the ones that we're focusing on mainly. That does not mean that we don't worry about things like intellectual property issues and things like that, but they are dealt in a different mechanisms and different forms.
So earlier in John's speech, he sort of eloquently talked, and again right now, about how DNS abuse isn't necessarily as glamorous as, content takedowns or, tackling some of the more high-profile issues that kind of plague the internet. And the reason that it is important to stay within the parameters of DNS abuse for us and not overreach into areas that we aren't, prepared to handle, is that this is our wheelhouse. We are the only, as the infrastructure guardians, we are the only people qualified to deal with these issues and to do it really well. And we can't, in the same way that we aren't, I mean, I guess you could say we're platforms, but we technically are not platforms. And so we don't step in on platform-related issues. And you're not going to have a large, you're not going to have Twitter deciding to take on DNS abuse or, any other large social platform. This is for us, and so it's up to us as a community to handle it.
Thank you, John and Kelly. So I think it's very important to define this artificial word well, so the industry can actually put some work on it, right? If we either intentionally or unintentionally expand the meaning of this definition a lot, we might not get anything done. It could be, different perceptions and couldn't get anything done. So I appreciate John and Kelly on this. So for other parts, I think I would like Antonia and Alban, Kelly, to have something on like how the ICANN community has done in mitigating the DNS abuse from registry, like domain registry or registrar's point, and the regional perspective, then what global regional initiatives that you are aware of. So I think since Antonia is close to me, I will let her to go first. Right.
Oh, well, sitting next to you actually makes me nervous. Okay, thank you, Howard. Howard already mentioned that today we are talking about ICANN community, how ICANN community cope with DNS abuse. And I'd like to let you know that I come from Alibaba Cloud. So ICANN is comprised of different stakeholder groups, and we have domain registrars and also registries. The company I'm coming from, Alibaba Cloud, is both the domain registries and also registrar. So we have multiple identity. And in fact, I want to share with you some data. For the registrar business, Alibaba Cloud currently have nearly 6 million GTLD domain names under management, and we have another 5 million CCTLD domain names under management. That is a really huge amount, and we are the top registrar in China and also in Asia Pacific. Every day or even every second, we receive countless of reports from different parties, from different reporters to let us know that, the domain name you are managing is have some suspicious abusive activities, and so actually we are under a lot of pressure to handle and take care of all these reports. So I'd like to share with you some practices we have been done during the past few years. We have a hybrid platform, online platform for all the reporters. They can just simply send their reports through this platform, and there are web forms. And it's classified into different types because, such as if you are reporting spam issues, and you can use there are different tags, and you can just choose which one you'd like to report, which category can it fall into. And we will use this platform to let the reporters know what kind of materials or evidences we need so as to prove or help us to certify whether these activities or behavior is real. And then we have a dedicated security team to check, to monitor all these reports from time to time. And we have a standard procedure which is already published on the platform for all the reporters to know. And yes, this is what we do for the reporting. And on the other hand, we also have a monitoring system which is developed by our security team to check all the domains. I already mentioned that we have altogether like 11 million domain names under management, and our security team can scan all these domains on a 5-day basis. That is what we do now, but this year we are trying to shorten the time from 5 days to 3 days. So during this scanning, if we find any of the domain name or its website or its usage has illegal activities or other abusive activities, our security team will just suspend the domain names or send notice to the domain registrant to ask them to take necessary actions. So it's just a general procedure we are doing right now. Thank you.
So in terms of DNS abuse, can I quickly mention one thing? So I think the first thing that we have to realize is that, as John mentioned, the definition of DNS abuse is actually artificial, as you mentioned. And the reason why it is artificial is because, in general, I think the ICANN community kind of agree on that kind of technical abuse definition, but outside ICANN world, there are different people disagreeing. The most recent one would be INTA, the International Trademark Association, come up with different definition of DNS abuse. And one of the key things to remember is that we are trying to address a really practical issue, which is phishing attack, malware, spam, and all that. And I think one of the highlight in one of the recent ICANN meeting by the CIA is that they released a report with a graph that show phishing attacks increasing. They calculate by different measurements, whereas we, in the domain industry, we also have another report in terms of data that show a reduction in DNS abuse. So as long as we have a different trend line, we are not going to have an agreement on the definition. So I think the in some way, I would slightly disagree on the importance of finding a definition, because I think we can never agree on a definition. And I don't know, yes, Harold, should I share my
Sure,
perspective
sure.
now?
Can our supporting team bring up the slides that Alban have? Thank you.
So one of the things that to address Howard's original, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Original question is that what are we doing in terms of cooperation in the industry? So this is one of the highlights, and I would like to say this first because CSC and TWNIC actually established an agreement to address DNS abuse. As you probably know, TWNIC and .Asia first signed such a trusted notifier agreement, and we are going to sign with TWNIC to address this. I think a commercial cooperation would be extremely important, because by definition, I cannot deal with anything to do with content, but if you have a phishing attack, there needs to be content in order to qualify as a phishing attack. So this is an intrinsic difficulty. So what I'm going to propose, this is the graph, but I won't show it. Now, the problem is that I want to propose is, this is a commercial problem. We have to view it as a commercial problem. The problem is that when the phisher create a phishing attacks, it creates some kind of harm, some kind of cost to the brand that they're attacking. Now that brand would be costing money in terms of, my customer being harmed, I have to spend money doing anti-phishing monitoring, takedown and whatnot. Now what they have to do is that, they are experiencing too many phishing. So they probably going to engage a provider, law firm or whatnot, to actually go and take down the phishing attacks. So a large volume of takedown are being done by different providers. So the cost is being transferred away from the brand owners into the takedown community. And this cost is going to be transferred into the registrar community. And they have no way to transfer that cost any further, because they have to spend the money to hire a lot of people doing abuse contact. One of the largest registrar, I won't name them, but I think in one of the ICANN meeting, they mentioned that they're only able to deal with 7% of all the complaints. So this is the problem that we're facing. It's not the lack of willingness to deal with this. It's that commercially, I cannot justify hire 100 people just to deal with abuse complaint, because they are running a business. So this is, if we see this as a commercial problem, then we have to find a commercial solution to the problem. And this is what I am trying to create together with TWNIC.Asia and possibly others as well, because we as a community don't need to deal with the definition of DNS abuse. The registrar is most likely a hosting provider, which is dealing with content as well. So we have to deal with this nevertheless. So why don't we establish some kind of system to reverse the cost? So let's just say that we have a registrar receive a huge amount of cost on dealing with this. Let's transfer the cost back up to the food chain, the takedown providers, transform that into efficiency, pass that back down into the brand owners, and then ultimately pass that down to the infringer, who it needs to incur the cost because the phishing attack now only lasts a day, and they cannot earn the money that they need to earn. So we haven't really got into this commercial discussion a lot. We are really focusing on the definition. And one of the things I don't like, to be honest, is that we focus too much on social responsibility when it comes to DNS abuse. We always blame registry for the lack of social responsibility. But in fact, we have social responsibility. We are trying our best to spend the money to deal with the DNS abuse, but we cannot commercially justify that cost. So this is the perspective I would like to propose. We as a community, we need to work better with cybersecurity community, with the commercial world, to reverse DNS abuse from a commercial perspective. Cool. Thank you. That's it.
Yep. Thank you, Alban, for this very or new perspective on this. It's always place to work on. And I think John may have some comments to your comments. So.
Yeah, so, and then I'm going to give it to Kelly because I know she's in the queue before me. So that's one perspective. So the beauty of the ICANN world is we're multi-stakeholder. So there is indeed a commercial aspect to this, but there is also a social responsibility aspect to this. So if you are a law enforcement or a public safety person, the brand is not the issue for you. It is the victimization at the other end. So, and that's the beauty of the ICANN realm, is we do come together with all of these inputs. So a lot of abuse isn't brand associated. For example, when we talk about botnet command and controls, I have been involved in taking down literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of names over the years, and they are randomized strings. So it's not just the commercial. This is a real problem, but it's only one aspect of the problem. And when we talk about a definition of DNS abuse, that's important. It is a definition of DNS abuse. If you come from a different world, you are going to have a different definition, and it's okay that we don't agree on the definition with when people come from different views. But in the world where we're dealing with contracts and policy, we need a definition we can agree to. And you know, the industry and the multi-stakeholder community, and I'll ask Kelly about this a little bit, she's also involved in some of this stuff, seems to have come to a subset of abuse types that they agree fall under this technical DNS abuse aspect.
Cool. Thank you for the comment, John. And Kelly, yes, go ahead.
So I've had the pleasure of dealing with this issue as a registry service provider, and now as an abuse mitigation services provider at IQ Global. And I will say, this is really fascinating to be seated between the two of you, because I lie somewhere in the middle. Like, this is just brilliant casting, Howard. Like, I'm somewhere right in the middle.
We did it on purpose, sorry.
And I do, to agree with your point, I do want to say, registries and registrars do not get enough credit in general for the amount of work that they actually are doing to mitigate abuse. And it is, there is so much to deal with. It's not just dealing with the actual things that are happening, dealing with the threats that are in our own environment, DNS threats, but we're also responding in real time to global legislation that affects internet service providers. Internet infrastructure providers. And to sort of, to fend off all of that and to remain in compliance is kind of like what we're all here together trying to do. So the company I work for is Norwegian, and there is this saying or phrase or word in Norwegian called dugnad. I hope I said that correctly. But it basically means, you know what, I'm sorry, I need to look at my own notes. I don't speak Norwegian. It's working together to fulfill the responsibility of the community. And I think this applies really well to this issue, because that's what we're all doing in our right now imperfect ways. We don't have, we have the best definitions of it that we possibly can. We are working with, what we can sort of handle right now as a community. And so in terms of, Howard, you asked what the global initiatives are. So the very first step towards getting to where we are now was the registrar global framework for abuse. We worked on that a couple years ago, and we all kind of, got together and decided globally, here are the things that we agree are unacceptable. And so that was sort of the first step. And then this year, we've got the RRA amendment process, where we have, once again defined what DNS abuse is and sort of what our minimum mitigating steps are going to be as a global community. So, and we have, community tools. The registrar stakeholder group developed the ACID tool, which Prudence, who's sitting right there from Mark Monitor, spoke about that at Nordic Domain Days at length. If you have any questions about Acid Tool and how it works, please talk to Prudence because she is the expert in the room. The DNSAI has NetBeacon for registry reporting, and there's companies like mine who provide software and solutions for mitigating DNS abuse. We have the Abuse Manager tool that helps registries, registrars, and hosting companies monitor abuse that's coming in, and the solutions are wild. We've Spam House in the room. They're one of the threat feeds. We have hundreds of threat feeds that we use. We use AI. We use machine learning. We're using humanly vetted reporting. You're constantly, when you run a business like this, you're constantly looking for new ways to provide actionable evidence to your clients. Because this is a tough issue. We're dealing with really complicated stuff, and to the point of everyone earlier who was talking about AI, it's fundamentally changing what the landscape of this is, both from a mitigation perspective, because we can use it to clean up the mess, but also from a threat perspective. You're seeing actors using AI in ways that are really advanced and really insidious, and it's becoming really difficult to tell. 10 years ago, if you got a phishing email, it's pretty easy to tell what was, if you were a little bit sophisticated, it was easy to tell what was going on. And now it's really not, at first glance at least. And so at the end of the day, again, we're not just responding to threats that are happening in real time. We have to also predict what the threats of the future are going to be. And we also have to predict what global legislation is going to look like and how we're going to handle that as a community. And this is, it's easier if we're working together. It's easier if we are all agreeing on a base level of solution to move forward. And we're never going to solve this problem. We're never going to tie it up in a neat bow. There's always going to be, much like crime in the real world and threats in the real world, this is always going to be a problem. But we can, if we do it together, it's going to be a little bit easier to deal with.
Cool, thank you, Kelly. And actually, all you guys saying about what you guys have been done makes me feel like I have to have John to give us some introduction, like what ICANN has done on this issue. It's not like just the community has done things, we didn't do anything. Go ahead, John.
So, okay, I've got volume on this. So it's interesting. ICANN is a strange beast, right? So I work in what I will refer to as the secretariat. We're the staff, right? We're the guys that move papers around and come out and give speeches and things like that. My group very specifically works on research and understanding issues in the ecosystem so we can bring data and knowledge into the discussion. Right, so we're not doing research to save the world because it's unsavable. We will always have DNS abuse. We will always have issues. That's very true. Right? But if we can understand what is happening and we can have informed policy discussions, because remember, ICANN is a policy forum, then that's a good thing. So we have multiple projects ongoing, some very similar to what these people are doing. We also have a lot of data that we bring in from threat feeds, also using machine learning to try and understand what's happening. We have one product that measures reputation of the DNS space. It's unfortunately got the word abuse in the title. I didn't name it, but it's actually reputation data, because we heard a word here from Kelly, actionable, right? So what is actionable? Like, reputation data is not actionable. It's saying this something looks bad. It's not saying here's the evidence. So we have other tools. We have another tool called DNS Sticker. We like acronyms. It says DNS Sticker, but it's actually an acronym which means something very long that I can't remember anymore. But that actually gathers evidence. And gathering evidence about abuse is actually not easy. People will tell you, Well, why don't you just send me a screenshot of the fish page? So if you're being fished and you see the screen and you take a snapshot and you send it to me, just because you can see that doesn't mean I can see that. Right? I can go and look at exactly the same URL, the same thing, and get a completely different view that looks completely legitimate. So we're trying to understand what's happening in the world of the bad guys. So we spend a lot of time doing research. We spend a lot of time working with communities. You mentioned the DNS Abuse Institute. I'm an advisor to the institute. We work with GCA and all these other organizations. Member of the Anti-Phishing Working Group, member of MORG. We are a member of the Forum for Incident Responders, FIRST. So we're very active trying to understand and then taking what we learn and trying to pass that back to the community. We're also active in the contracting discussions. So the registries and the registrars came to ICANN and said, these contracts suck. We can fix them. We can do something to raise the floor, to raise the level. And the contracted parties came and said, why don't we add, because oddly enough, this was not in the contracts, an obligation to actually mitigate abuse. And they've done that. We've got it in the contractual language, and now it's going to go to vote. And you know, if you look at organizations that we work with, a lot of the contracted parties are also involved. So it's very true that there's a lot of work going on here, and you will always hear the negative. You will always hear how bad the world is, not just on the internet and the DNS, but in general. And people will not necessarily tell you about all the good work that's going on. So it's good that we're hearing about that. So you know, we're very active. We have a lot of sessions on this. We come to things like this, but also the contracted parties are also very active.
Thank you, John. And I totally agree with you. There's a lot of good work behind the scene. And it, just as you just mentioned, like actionable. You give an example, like when the different people look at the same URL, it does not come out with the same result. It's because it, like Kelly said, with all those support, they're becoming a lot more sophisticated. Like the same URL, they will identify the origination of the request. And then they pop up different contents. Like say, if it's from Hong Kong, it could be like if it's the request from Hong Kong, it could be a fish page. But if you from a China mainland, a request from the China mainland, it will be totally just fine because they detect and give you different contents on that. So it's just a larger word. It's never ending. Yeah, there's a Chinese saying on that. It's called 道高一尺，魔高一丈. It means you bring the good one to here, the bad guy's going up here again, and then you going up, and it's just a never-ending cat and mouse game sometimes. So, and both John and Kelly mentioned that the RA and RA amendments. So I would like, because Ali Cloud and also CSC are both the contracted parties of ICANN, so I would like to hear you two to give your opinion on the RAA and RA change, like what's been changed and how do you feel about it?
Actually, I'm not sure how many on-premise know what RA and RAA means. I'm sorry that there are so many acronyms within the ICANN community.
Yeah, that's true. Sorry.
Yeah, let me explain that. RA stands for Registry Agreement, and RAA is the Registrar Accreditation Agreement. And there's another term, CPH, Contracted Party House, which refers to registries and the registrars, because registries and the registrars have contract with ICANN. So that's why we normally just use a contracted party to refer to registries and the registrars. Kelly already mentioned that actually before the RAA and the RA amendment process began, registries and the registrars are already done a lot of work to voluntarily mitigating DNS abuse. And In fact, Kelly also mentioned that it is very necessary to raise the ground floor for the registrars and the registries. And so during the past, I think it's over 6 months, and the contracted party have been working with ICANN to negotiating how to revise this contract, and we are making progress, and the agreement is already made. I think it's 2 weeks ago in DC during the most recent ICANN meeting. CPH and also ICANN held a readout session, a outreach session to let the whole community know about the progress. And I think right now the amendment is under public comment. So if you are interested to know what exactly has been revised, you can just visit ICANN's website and to check these updates. And if you have any comment, of course, you can just submit them to ICANN. And after the public comment closed, I think it's next week, ICANN and the contracted party will see whether there's further amendment need to the current version, and if not, these amendments will just go to the voting process for the entire registries and the registrar community to decide whether they approve these amendments. So.
So, Alban, will you be able to give a little overview, like what has been changed, like what will be the registrar or registry's action?
I can a little bit, but before I do so, I just want to quickly comment on one thing. I'm not against John, so you're okay saying it in the middle. I don't dare do that. And but I hope that but doesn't get me into trouble either. But the thing, I just want to quickly respond on one thing. We talk about actionable thing. So the definition of actionable is hard to define because you have to have a victim in order to action, because you have to confirm with the victim that this is indeed an infringement of the digital identity. Otherwise, how do you actually be 100% clear that this is a phishing attack? So I think this is why there are certainly two types, like the types of phishing that is against the commercial entity, another type that is basically a general phishing, saying that I'm the prince of Egypt or whatever, and send me some money. So that definitely is two types. But the problem is that if you think about these two types, how many banks are in the ICANN community? How many of ISP are in the ICANN community? Not in the ICANN community. Yep. So how do we maintain a multi-stakeholder model that actually really address the DNS abuse issue? They are definitely stakeholder. This is one of the reasons why I have been encouraged some of our customers, hey, come and listen to the problem, because it's really related to you on a daily basis. And even if you talk about the general type, we are working, we're a member of the Global Anti-Scam Alliance, GAZAT. I asked the guy in charge, are you part of ICANN community? I'm not familiar with ICANN. So that's the thing. We haven't got enough stakeholder from the community to address this. So this is one of the comments that I want to express. We have to get more people to talk about this issue in order to find the right solution. And the other thing regarding the whether the ICANN contract change is beneficial or not, my comment honestly is yes and no, because anything that we have to do with ICANN proactively asking for more contribution would be good. But if we think about that registrar that I mentioned, 7% of capacity of reading through all the abuse, if you say that you are mandatory to deal with everything, it's still the same problem. They haven't got the capacity to deal with this. So I would be skeptical whether a contract change or contract liability that say you are contractually required to address DNS abuse is actually going to be result in a practical change. We still have to work as a community to do more. But I would definitely say this is a good move. At least we define that this is important, and we as a community needs to address this. So I'm sorry for the long reply, but hopefully give you some comment there.
So I agree with you. And it's dead. No, so I agree with you.
Oh, there we go. You know.
There's also, thankfully, a couple of service providers in the space that make this a little bit easier on you guys. There's also something else that can be done to mitigate, that can happen in-house with a few changes to your TOU to make certain kinds of abuse a little less tolerable and a little easier to sort of cut off at the head. So tighten your contracts also.
What's a TOU for the audience?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Your terms of use. What is acceptable vis-a-vis your product.
This is a very interesting discussion. I didn't expect a heated discussion like this. But this is good. I think it's all you mentioned, because I noticed we also have some contracting party, like some registrars in the room too. So I think they will be also be interested to know and see how they can being more practically to implement those new requirements. And they actually also will need our help in a way, right? Not just updating the contract language. It's the first step, right? So, but next step, it's like we probably will have some hand holdings for them to hand-holding works for them to do, for us to do, to help them to be in compliance or contribute more. And further, I think, as Alban just said, we still have a large populations out there and not ICANN community yet. I think it's also demand on us to work hard to reach out to more of those stakeholders. So, John, you have a comment? Yes. Yes.
More of a pitch. So, in September, we're actually doing another meeting in Vietnam, and the first day of that meeting, the contracted parties are going to have a meeting to discuss.
I think that might.
Yeah, I think that mic's not that. There you go. Yeah. So the contracted parties will be meeting, or some of them, in Vietnam in early September, and they will spend a day talking about what does this contract mean, what does it mean to mitigate DNS abuse. If you are a contracted party, please vote yes, because if you don't vote, a non-vote is a no vote. That's important to remember. You actually have to vote. So I'd rather you voted no than you didn't vote at all, because then we at least know that you've read it. Read the contract language. We spent a lot of time, I personally spent a lot of time in rooms with registries and registrars trying to get the right level and the right level setting for this language. It talks about the fact that the abuse you need to deal with has to be well evidenced. We don't have clear evidentiary standards and things like this, but this is the first step in raising the bar. And there will be more discussions in the community about what else we can do going forward. A lot of the comments I've received is, this is great, but more needs to happen. And I said, if you're going to give a public comment, then that's a good public comment, but not, oh, you can't do this because more needs to happen. This is the first step. And I think we should commend the industry that has stepped forward and said, we need to make this first step. So if you are a contracted party and you're interested in what this means for contracted parties, do come to Vietnam. If you're not contracted party, come to Vietnam anyway. I hear it's going to be really good. We're going to have a lot of highly technical conversations at that conference together with the DNS Operations Analytics and Research Center, DNS OARC. I'm trying not to do acronyms. So yeah, just a pitch for our event in September. And yes, we do need to work together as an industry to help people understand and bring up the standards, but it's not ICANN staff that just have to do that. It's something we're going to all do together, and thankfully the industry is stepping up.
Thank you, John. Thank you for the pitch, actually. And thank you for the pitch also for voting, because it will most likely fall on my head too. Well, just like the last time, it will certainly fall on my head to chase everyone to vote. So,
I think for the voting requirements, there will be 90%, above 90% to vote yes to approve that amendment.
yes, we just had been through that with the RDAP amendment, say the new WHOIS protocol amendment in March or April, but it was a hard role. It was a hard work to have everyone to make the vote and pass the 90% threshold. It's very difficult, I would say. And thank you for the pitch. I will keep pitching until we finish the vote. So I think we have been discussed this quite thoroughly. So I think I would like to open the Q&A session for the floor and see if anyone has any questions or comments. Yeah. Also open the Q&A from online. So yes. So go ahead. Oh.
Hi, John from the Foundation for the Record. My question is to John. Can you please confirm the event that you mentioned is the ICANN DNS Symposium in Da Nang on the 5th of September? That's the correct one?
That's the one, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Oh, okay.
Hi, my name's Peter from Outer. Kelly, you mentioned the terms of use needs to be strengthened. Who are you referring? Whose terms of use are you suggesting needs to be strengthened?
I'm sorry. Thank you for asking. I'm referring to registry and registrar terms of use.
Okay.
So, just a quick comment. I think just for people who may not follow the discussion really well, at the moment, a lot of the takedown relies on the terms of use established by the registry or registrar or hosting provider, and we have to complain that there's a violation of the terms of use. So a clearer and better written terms of use would be really helpful in terms of phishing takedowns or abuse takedown in general.
Just randomly give the microphone.
Sure. I was like, who never either raised their hand or like hiding their face.
That's another question.
No, it's all okay.
Oh yeah. I think I'll get Carol first.
So a couple of things of feedback. I hear that if there's only 7% capacity to deal with.
Who are you?
Yeah, is this working? Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah. Karel Bitter, Spamhaus. So 7% capacity. The capacity only deal with 7% of the issues. Raise the prices. Cost of doing business. And if the rest of the industry says, we don't make any money anymore, no, everybody needs to raise the price. The domains can be more expensive. Another thing is know your customer processes. In the rest of the world, where like financial industry, insurance, there are very strict regulations around knowing who you do business with, and that is something that I think the registrar community could learn a lot from. So that's something I would like to hear more of. So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity to be had there too, because the best way of dealing with abuse is to make it not happen in the first place.
John from the Foundation for the Record again. We've been discussing about the different categorizations for DNS abuse that pretty much have to do with some technical elements, but I was wondering if at some point there's been any conversation on expanding this to anything that has to do, or tangentially even on content moderation, which I'll be very, very concerned about.
So if you read ICANN's bylaws, there is a very specific, carve-out's not the right word, it's a, I don't even know how to say it, it's basically...
Section 1.1.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We cannot deal with content. So
that is not what I've been hearing lately when it comes to our RVCs and so forth. So I'm a bit concerned about whether an amendment on the bylaws might be on the way.
So not today.
Okay.
There is no proposed amendment to the bylaws. So you're talking about things like an RV PICs and RVCs, and will there be special things for content? Not without a major bylaws change. So that's a really interesting conversation, and it's one that is. We've also heard some of these things about people want to do this kind of attributes in the PICs and stuff. These are around any future TLDs and special requirements that an operator may wish to put on that TLD. And there is a question about whether any of this could be content related. From an ICANN perspective, it would require a bylaws change. So there is nothing in motion at the moment, but so that discussion is happening in corridors and rumors as far as I can tell.
And I heard there was quite some substantial conversation happening in Washington in the last ICANN meeting. That's the information that I'm getting. I wasn't there.
Yeah, I wasn't in every meeting room, so there might have been. I don't know if any of the registry.
But I was thinking about. So that's one side of the situation. But then, at some point would you imagine that DNS abuse as a concept would also be extended to abusing DNS in order to further contain that might be objectionable for certain parties?
So that sounds like content to me when it's and we try to not go into things that are somebody's opinion of something being bad or not, and rather things that are. This is why we have this narrow broadband. Never say never, but any kind of change like that would have to go through the whole community process. So, and I've not seen those discussions happening at the moment, but I'm not in every meeting, so I don't know if.
Yeah, perfect.
Are you also, are you possibly referring to not things that are happening within the ICANN community, but larger, like, global legislation talks by any chance? Because there's a few like little things percolating sort of like here and there that I could see you speaking to, and that's, those are conversations that aren't happening in the ICANN. I mean, we talk about how we could not have to deal with those things, but is that what you're referring to?
No, the information that I got was specifically from a readout from NCOOC that I was attending a few days ago. Because of the time difference, I'm based in Malaysia, so Washington was a time killer for me, and I wasn't able to be in as many sessions as I wanted. And so during that readout, it was reason that this conversation has been had, and that there was a little of, I don't want to say heated debate, but that it had been pointed out to that possibility, and there was some concerns that were raised. And so I understand the part of the bylaws. My interest was whether a possible bypass of the bylaws or a way to push it would be, if we recategorize what DNS abuse could be and try to push into it the concept of content moderation, would that be a backdoor to try to push for that bylaws, which personally would concern me a lot, because I do believe that ICANN should really remain at the mission that it has right now and not start generating some type of content moderation mogul, which would be pretty much the outcome of any of those changes.
Yep. Can I add a quick comment there? So let me give you an example. If there's a phishing website of a particular bank, but they disable the login function of that website. Now that is not a phishing attack at the moment. It's a brand abuse issue. Now for the bank, it is a phishing attack. They don't care about the definition on a technical perspective, because next second they can enable that phishing attack by enabling that login function. So this is the problem that we're facing. I'm not again. Well, just to be clear, I'm not advocating a change in ICANN bylaw, but I think we have to be extremely practical when we talk about DNS abuse, because in a practical sense, there are some. If you talk about phishing attacks as a problem for the society, and it's extremely harmful for the general society, and we want to stop that as well. some kind of phishing content needs to happen in order to define that it is a phishing attack. And phishers are skillful in escaping the strict definition of phishing attacks. So we have to kind of not talk too much about how do we define it, in my personal opinion, because we can never agree on a strict definition. Let's focus on the solution. How do we actually look into this? And personally, I think this is something that we have to work really flexibly. So if we talk about internet law, so one of the key cornerstones of internet law would be the Section 230, and it established that we want to have flexibility in terms of allowing the intermediary to actually deal with content without government intervention. I think we have to work in a really flexible manner under the principle of Section 230. It might be a bit difficult for those who don't follow that discussion, but hopefully that addresses some of your concern. Yeah.
I think you have one more question, one last question.
Last question, answer. Lucky me. Okay, thank you. Kenny Huang, Chair of TWNIC and also Chair of APNIC. Basically, just taking some statistics for you, because for example, like starting from this year until right now, and we're receiving 3 cases from the court order, and actually we has been also been reported by law enforcement more than about 10,000 abusive domain names and report to us. But the problem is that those 10,000 domain names basically is not registered under the TW, it's registered somewhere else. And what happened when we try to file application to the other registrar to complain about that kind of situation, the only response we have is go through mutual legal assistance treaty or go to the law enforcement agent for that kind of claim. So eventually, the case was still there, and all the reported abusive domain is still alive there. So we're just curious because we already have ICANN registrar agreement as well. But basically, I don't know what's the next version is. I didn't check it, what will be the next version for the contract. But according to existing contract, basically already covers some of the concept, and the contractors basically they have some minimal requirement to do some sort of cyber clearance responsibility, but basically they didn't do anything. They just receiving the complaint and then take no action at all. So probably double check with the new contract. Probably they have some actionable behavior for the contractual party, and make sure all the application, all the complaint can be enforceable, because that's the situation we have so far. Thank you.
So oversimplifying. So I'm sorry, Kenny, if I'm going to oversimplify this. The current contract basically says that you must investigate and respond. It does not say that you have to do anything to mitigate the abuse. That is precisely what the registries and registrars have come forward and said, okay, let's fix this and let's add that requirement to actually do something about the abuse that's ongoing. So it's a small change in words, but it's a big change in intent.
Thank you all. I mean, the discussion about DNS abuse has been going on for more than a decade, or even longer. Wow.
Poor John.
Yeah, poor John, yes. So we wouldn't be, say, finish the discussion within today's hour. There's no way to do it, and it's ongoing anyway. So this is a mode of interaction and more outreach, and so inviting all the community members to join the force to work together to mitigate such threats. So I think given the time, we have 2 minutes left, and any panelist has any last comments, or just a couple sentences of final remarks from each of the panelists. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to follow the question Kenny just asked, and also John's response. It's the current amendment is a very minor change, but I remember that back in DC, during the outreach session, our representative just keep repeating the concept that we are trying to, in this amendment, we are trying to raise the ground floor requirements for registries and registrars. And back then, the contractual obligation is a little bit vague, but for the new version, it's registrars and the registries, if they have clear evidence, they are asked to take very direct and clear action to stop or mitigate the abuse. So that's the major change. And I'm sure it's, of course, it's just a first step, but I'm sure that for the community and for the contracted parties, we are confident that in the future, we will try to improve how we handle all of these from this point. And yes.
I don't think I have any final comments apart from thank you, everybody.
There's no final for you.
No.
There's no final. Kelly.
I guess my takeaway is, we all need to do this together and come to some sort of a very tenuous agreement on how we're going to do that.
So my comment is that I think we have to remember DNS abuse expand beyond ICANN. Hosting provider, ISPs, commercial world needs to get involved. And I believe this is something that we have to address, to remember that this is something that we have to help especially the registrar community, to be honest, that we have to find a way to reduce the cost for dealing with abuse. Because as long as cost is being absorbed by the community, you will never find a solution, because it is ultimately a resource problem, so a cost problem. And if we are able to work as a community, to work beyond ICANN community as well, to establish more of these trusted notifier. Thank you, Kenny, for signing with us as well. More of this, to privately establish protocol, to quickly transfer costs away from the end provider, we may be able to work something out together. I think that's the closing comment.
Thank you. Thank you all the panelists and all the colleagues that joined us this afternoon. Thank you. I think we can adjourn the session. Thank you.
I guess we could. Where do you want us? Okay. Yes.
more parts. Top-level domain, second-level domain, and third-level domain. Once you own a top-level domain, you can manage and assign all domains under it. TLDs are global internet key infrastructure resources and an opportunity for a lot of companies. Brands applied for brand TLDs to improve their autonomy and controllability, showing their charm on the internet. For example, .Google. Anyone who accesses the .Google site is entering Google's online space. Of course, .BMW is for BMW. .Apple is for Apple Incorporated. But if brand TLDs are applied by others, the result will be different because TLDs are globally unique. Besides brand TLDs, there are geographic TLDs named by cities and areas. For example, .Tokyo. .Tokyo is currently being used by online stores, sporting events, influencer pages, media, and other areas. Such unique TLD has become an exclusive nameplate for local enterprises to showcase to the public, and a global business card for cities or areas in the internet era. But why do most companies still use .com domains? Until 2012, there were only 23 officially operating gTLDs. The most common TLD is .com, and its premium resources become scarce. So there's a growing call for new gTLDs. In 2012, ICANN launched the first round of new gTLD application program. European, American, and some leading Chinese companies apply their own exclusive TLDs. In addition to English TLDs, Chinese TLDs were also widely popular, aiming to manifest Chinese culture.
It is our hope and intention that many of those new TLDs will be in local scripts to the internet and allow them to communicate in their native language with family, friends, municipalities, and more.
ICANN launched the first round of new historical stage. New business models, new products and technology have emerged. Enterprises can be listed in the root zone to construct and manage internet infrastructure resources using new gTLDs. If you missed the first round in 2012, don't worry. ICANN Community is actively preparing for launching the subsequent round of new gTLD program. New gTLD application and operation demand professional specialties and know-hows. ZDNS was deeply involved in the first round of new gTLD application and participated in the policy discussions and application processes. Successfully helped CITIC Group, Unicom, Baidu, Sohu, etc. apply for brand TLDs and operate in compliance in mainland China. Currently, ZDNS acts as an RSP for more than 60 TLDs and offers integrated total domain solution to more than 500 global enterprises. ZDNS, one-stop top-level domain name service expert. Why do most of the domain names end in .com? To figure this out, let's look at the composition first. Domain name, the house number of the internet world, or the URL, consists of two or more parts. Top-level domain, second-level domain, and third-level domain. Once you own a top-level domain, you can manage and assign all domains under it. TLDs are global internet key infrastructure resources and an opportunity for a lot of companies. Brands applied for brand TLDs to improve their autonomy and controllability, showing their charm on the internet. For example, .Google. Anyone who accesses the .Google site is entering Google's online space. Of course, .BMW is for BMW. .Apple is for Apple Incorporated. But if brand TLDs are applied by others, the result will be different because TLDs are globally unique. Besides brand TLDs, there are geographic TLDs named by cities and areas. For example, .Tokyo. Tokyo is currently being used by online stores, sporting events, influencer pages, media, and other areas. Such unique TLD has become an exclusive nameplate for local enterprises to showcase to the public, and a global business card for cities or areas in the internet era. But why do most companies still use .com domains? Until 2012, there were only 23 officially operating gTLDs. The most common TLD is .com, and its premium resources become scarce. So there's a growing call for new gTLDs. In 2012, ICANN launched the first round of new gTLD application program. European, American, and some leading Chinese companies applied for their own exclusive TLDs. In addition to English TLDs, Chinese TLDs were also widely popular, aiming to manifest Chinese culture.
It's our hope and intention that many of those news TLDs will be in local scripts to the internet and allow them to communicate in their native language with family, friends, municipalities, and more.
ICANN launched the first round of new gTLD program to enter a new historical stage. New business models, new products and technology have emerged. Enterprises can be listed in the root zone to construct and manage internet infrastructure resources using new gTLDs. If you missed the first round in 2012, don't worry. ICANN Community is actively preparing for launching the subsequent round of new gTLD program. New gTLD application and operation demand professional specialties and know-hows. ZDNS was deeply involved in the first round of new gTLD application and participated in the policy discussions and application processes. Successfully helped CITIC Group, Unicom, Baidu, Sohu, etc. apply for brand TLDs and operate in compliance in mainland China. Currently, ZDNS acts as an RSP for more than 60 TLDs and offers integrated total domain solution to more than 500 global enterprises. ZDNS, one-stop top-level domain name service expert. Why do most of the domain names end in .com? To figure this out, let's look at the composition first. Domain name, the house number of the internet world, or the URL, consists of two or more parts. Top-level domain, second-level domain, and third-level domain. Once you own a top-level domain, you can manage and assign all domains under it. TLDs are global internet key infrastructure resources and an opportunity for a lot of companies. Brands applied for brand TLDs to improve their autonomy and controllability, showing their charm on the internet. For example, .google. Anyone who accesses the .google site is entering Google's online space. Of course, .bmw is for BMW. .apple is for Apple Incorporated. But if brand TLDs are applied by others, the result will be different because TLDs are globally unique. Besides brand TLDs, there are geographic TLDs named by cities and areas. For example, .tokyo. .tokyo is currently being used by online stores, sporting events, influencer pages, media, and other areas. Such unique TLD has become an exclusive nameplate for local enterprises to showcase to the public, and a global business card for cities or areas in the internet era. But why do most companies still use .com domains? Until 2012, there were only 23 officially operating gTLDs. The most common TLD is .com, and its premium resources become scarce. So there's a growing call for new gTLDs. In 2012, ICANN launched the first round of new gTLD application program. European, American, and some leading Chinese companies applied. Chinese TLDs were also widely popular, aiming to manifest Chinese culture.
It's our hope and intention that many of those news TLDs will be in local scripts to the internet and allow them to communicate in their native language with family, friends, municipalities, and more.
ICANN launched the first round of new gTLD program to enter a new historical stage. New business models, new products and technology have emerged. Enterprises can be listed in the root zone to construct and manage internet infrastructure resources using new gTLDs. If you missed the first round in 2012, don't worry. ICANN Community is actively preparing for launching the subsequent round of new gTLD program. New GTLD application and operation demand professional specialties and know-hows. ZDNS was deeply involved in the first round of new GTLD application and participated in the policy discussions and application processes. Successfully helped CITIC Group, Unicom, Baidu, Sohu, etc. apply for brand TLDs and operate in compliance in mainland China. Currently, ZDNS acts as an RSP for more than 60 TLDs and offers integrated total domain solution to more than 500 global enterprises. ZDNS, one-stop top-level domain name service expert. Why do most of the domain names end in .com? To figure this out, let's look at the composition first. Domain name, the house number of the internet world, or the URL, consists of two or more parts. Top-level domain, second-level domain, and third-level domain. Once you own a top-level domain, you can manage and assign all domains under it. TLDs are global internet key infrastructure resources and an opportunity for a lot of companies. Brands applied for brand TLDs to improve their autonomy and controllability, showing their charm on the internet. For example, .Google. Anyone who accesses the .Google site is entering Google's online space. Of course, .BMW is for BMW. .Apple is for Apple Incorporated. But if brand TLDs are applied by others, the result will be different because TLDs are globally unique. Besides brand TLDs, there are geographic TLDs named by cities and areas. For example, .Tokyo. .Tokyo is currently being used by online stores, sporting events, influencer pages, media, and other areas. Such unique TLD has become an exclusive nameplate for local enterprises to showcase to the public, and a global business card for cities or areas in the internet era. But why do most companies still use .com domains? Until 2012, there were only 23 officially operating GTLDs. The most common TLD is .com, and its premium resources become scarce. So there's a growing call for new GTLDs. In 2012, ICANN launched the first round of new GTLD application program. Leading Chinese companies applied for their own exclusive TLDs. In addition to English TLDs, Chinese TLDs were also widely popular, aiming to manifest Chinese culture.
It's our hope and intention that many of those news TLDs will be in local scripts to the internet and allow them to communicate in their native language with family, friends, municipalities, and more.
ICANN launched the first round of new GTLD program to enter a new historical stage. New business models, new products and technology have emerged. Enterprises can be listed in the root zone to construct and manage internet infrastructure resources using new GTLDs. If you missed the first round in 2012, don't worry. ICANN Community is actively preparing for launching the subsequent round of new GTLD program. New GTLD application and operation demand professional specialties and know-hows. ZDNS was deeply involved in the first round of new GTLD application and participated in the policy discussions and application processes. Successfully helped CITIC Group, Unicom, Baidu, Sohu, etc. apply for brand TLDs and operate in compliance in mainland China. Currently, ZDNS acts as an RSP for more than 60 TLDs and offers integrated total domain solution to more than 500 global enterprises. ZDNS, one-stop top-level domain name service expert. Why do most of the domain names end in .com? To figure this out, let's look at the composition first. Domain name, the house number of the internet world, or the URL, consists of two or more parts. Top-level domain, second-level domain, and third-level domain. Once you own a top-level domain, you can manage and assign all domains under it. TLDs are global internet key infrastructure resources and an opportunity for a lot of companies. Brands applied for brand TLDs to improve their autonomy and controllability, showing their charm on the internet. For example, .google. Anyone who accesses the .google site is entering Google's online space. Of course, .bmw is for BMW. .apple is for Apple Incorporated. But if brand TLDs are applied by others, the result will be different because TLDs are globally unique. Besides brand TLDs, there are geographic TLDs named by cities and areas. For example, .tokyo. .tokyo is currently being used by online stores, sporting events, influencer pages, media, and other areas. Such unique TLD has become an exclusive nameplate for local enterprises to showcase to the public, and a global business card for cities or areas in the internet era. But why do most companies still use .com domains? Until 2012, there were only 23 officially operating gTLDs. The most common TLD is .com, and its premium resources become scarce. So there's a growing call for new gTLDs. In 2012, ICANN launched the first round of new gTLD application program. European, American, Chinese TLDs were also widely popular, aiming to manifest Chinese culture.
It's our hope and intention that many of these new TLDs will be in local scripts.
In APAC. In this section today, we will discuss the topic that was related with the expansion of DNS. As we all know, that first round of a new GTLD program, which was launched in 2012, expanded the number of top-level domains to over 1,400 TLDs today. And ICANN is moving to launch the subsequent round of the new GTLD applications and expand the DNS again. So there's a lot of discussion in the community and also to the broader audience about well, the APAC region will benefit from even more top-level domains, and how can our industry work together to prepare and catch the opportunity that might avail, contributing to the region's digital transformation. And today we feel very honored to have 4 experts in this industry to share their thoughts and insights today. And they are Mr. Michael Riddle, the Chief Executive Officer for CenturyLink. And we have Michael Fleming, which is Regional Directors of North America, the GMO Brand Security, Inc. And we have Kathy Zhang, who is the DNS Operation Manager from China Internet Network Information Center, CINIC. And last we have Emma Hosing, which is Managing Directors of IMHOST Ltds. And we will have presentations from the 4 distinguished guests for around 15 minutes each. And then we will probably have 20 to 25 minutes, and we will open the floor for questions and discussions, interactions with the audience on site, and also from the audience in the web chat. And then let's have a round of applause for all speakers first. Thank you. And the first, let's welcome Mr. Michael Riddle for his speech, and then he will present to us how to help new GTLD customers to make educated choices. Thank you. Please.
Thank you, and I guess I did the clicker. That got lost, but finally we've retrieved it. So thank you everyone for joining this presentation. I'm really excited. It's the first time that I present in China or in Asia at all. So really exciting, and thank you all for being here. So whereas CenturyLink does a lot of things, and today is generating most of its revenue with online advertising, our DNA is through and through domain names. This is how this has all started, and we carry this heritage with us into the future. And today I will present seven slides to you, starting off with the question whether the APAC region needs more NTLDs, what the benefits of NTLDs are for the ecosystem, the benefits for the customers more specifically, how we can all who are together in this room and in our network can work together to make this work. And then we will have a brief excursion into what I think is a very, very Asian subject, super apps, something which has not really evolved as a trend in Europe or North America. And then, of course, to refinance my travel cost, we're also going to speak how Centralink can help in all these things. So, the first question, does the APAC region need more NTLDs? When we look at the land mass that Asia Pacific takes up and at the population, it is very much underrepresented. In the last ICANN round, only 303 out of the 1,030 applications were actually submitted from Asia. And we can only wonder why that is. Generally, the pickup of NTLDs has been very strong, in particular from mainland China, who in the beginning of the NTLD program has been by far the largest market, but in the meantime it has a little bit cooled off, and the two largest NTLD registrars from Asia, being Alibaba and GMO, together make up around 15% of all NTLDs, which in the beginning was more like 50% of the NTLDs. And one answer could be that maybe there are not really enough NTLDs that are specifically targeted to the Asia-Pacific region. If you just look at the statistics of these two largest local registrars, it is .top and XYZ in the case of Alibaba, and then XYZ followed by CFD in the case of GMO. And literally none of the IDN strings that have been registered for Asian countries, and we will see a case study in a few minutes, really makes it into the top 10, either globally nor with the Asia-centered registrars. And actually, there are some good examples. So this, I hope I pronounced that halfway correctly. So G, standing for mobile phone, is a good example where people have endeavored to actually launch a top-level domain that's specifically targeted to the Mandarin-speaking market, and for a very large vertical, being mobile phones. Let's not forget the most valuable company in my market cap, being Apple, is all today built around mobile phones. And here it is surprising that there is not more pickup of this market. There are probably enough shops selling mobile phones. There are enough mobile phone operators, enough companies that work somewhere in the mobile phone area, whether it's mobile phone repairs, or similar services. And this could be an interesting question to explore later in the Q&A session of this panel discussion. And so G is not the only example of a specific Asia targeted or APAC targeted domain. There's MOE and quite a few others which are either centered on certain major metropolitan areas like Tokyo and Osaka, and it can actually help to micro-target your market. But potentially we've all made, as an industry, a mistake, which is, when I still remember the time around the first application round in April 2012, let's just remember this, 11 years since the last application round was executed. And at that time there was a strong conviction that you would actually need to bet on keywords. And with SoG, we've just seen an example where someone bet on a keyword, because people were believing that Google would give this keyword in the top-level domain a very strong weight in their search algorithm. And while there is some evidence that probably it is a factor in the search algorithm among 200 or so other factors, it seems to not be a very strong one. And this is why the strategy to have like vertical specific top-level domains has not really worked out. Whereas .xyz, as in the meantime, the most successful new top-level domain, at least in numbers of domain name count, has basically stolen the show. And I can still remember, I think it was the Domain Fest, a conference that unfortunately has been discontinued in 2013, when Daniel Negari went on stage and said, look guys, I will win this game because I have registered the most generic top-level domain you could ever think of. And everyone disagreed, and you could literally see virtual tomatoes and eggs flying on stage trying to hit him. But he clearly had a vision that a generic domain name works very well. And so that could, for example, be an approach for the next round, to think about more Asia-Pacific focused generic names, or use IDN versions of generic names that have been successful in the rest of the world. And despite all this, despite all the noise around new top-level domains, until now they only make up 7.7% of all top-level domains. We learned this morning in John's speech that domain names are now like 40 years old. The ICANN system is now 25 years old. So this is the result after 11 years, which is 44% of the lifetime of ICANN, and almost 30% of the entire age of the domain system as a whole. So I think we can all work together to make this NTLD topic even more successful in the future. And what we've not put on this slide is, we as an industry, we must innovate and make sure that our DNS remains the prevailing DNS. These numbers exclude the new blockchain-based domain names, which is probably for the first time in our industry that an alt-root gained some traction. And we should really observe this and see how we can maintain universally acceptable or accessible internet, and avoid that there are collisions because people just register a new.com under some kind of blockchain. And this is why it's important that we have these conventions in order to align, to make sure that our DNS system prevails. So, as I said in the beginning, and repeated it quite a few times during this presentation, we all need to work together, registries and registrars, and of course we all have a joint interest in keeping the system the way that it is. And it will be our job to basically educate other businesses and end users why NTLDs can be useful or essential in the business processes for the brand protection or the identity building. The brands, but ultimately the brands themselves, they must take the choice. They will be charged all the fees. And here we as a group should come up with creative case studies, picking the best examples out from the new top-level domains to demonstrate to other brands what could be done so that this .brands trend is not dying off. We've seen actually, I think near 50% of all .brands have been retired in the meantime, which is something that we all together take responsibility for. We just didn't provide brands with a compelling reason why to have their own top-level domain, and this we must change. And ultimately also ICANN is in charge. ICANN is in a driver's seat. No one else can really define the timeline and the rules of procedure for a next round of new top-level domains. And it has been a very long time. Time to assess the success of the first round has probably been sufficient. And given that it is a stakeholder-based organization, it again then falls back on us to actually drive this process forward and contribute in that multi-stakeholder model that ICANN provides us with. Then, when we look at the underrepresentation of domain names in general, and also NTLDs in the Asia-Pacific market, as I mentioned before, just the number of domain names in existence or registered in the Asia-Pacific area is materially under-proportionate to the contribution or to the composition of the global population, or also the composition of the global GDP. The question is, why is that? And let's discuss this later together as a group. Is it maybe super apps that dominate many markets in Asia Pacific, where you just have one WeChat and you don't have like 5,000 clones of it living around it? Could be a reason. I have not been brought up here. It's only my second visit to Hong Kong in 6 years. But I'm already looking forward to a discussion whether maybe the super app trend is one of the reasons why the domain market is relatively small in Asia Pacific compared to, for example, the United States, when we just compare population and GDP. So, and then coming to what CentralNIC can do here. So CentralNIC actually operates a series of domain registrar brands. One of them is specifically targeted to the Asia-Pacific region, Asia Registry. And it is a registry you can actually register every kind of domain name, including NTLDs, whether Asia-Pacific related or not. And but it's clearly targeted to this market. Then CentralNIC has been, through hard work, managed to achieve the #1 position in operating new top-level domains. And so today we operate, I think, 109 top-level domains in total, and more than every second of the top 20 is on the CentralNIC platform. And in total we manage not far from 50% of all NTLDs that are currently in existence. And part of the success is that we've built a very resilient DNS system, which has 100% uptime over the last 27 years, which we've basically ensured by having it geographically distributed. Similar like the DNS system has been designed to be unbreakable. And but also for those who don't operate a top-level domain, through our reseller program, CentralNIC Reseller, we make 1,200 domain name or 1,200 different top-level domains available to any kind of registrar in the world in a fully automated fashion, and also the others we can also the other top-level domains we can provide in a fulfillment service. And this actually, why is this helpful? It actually helps other companies to quickly go into other markets. So one of our larger customers is GoDaddy, for example. If they wanted to start to sell domain names from the Central African Republic, no problem. It's one mouse click in the front end, and they can start. No lengthy accreditation processes. So this basically helps any registrar in the world to sell any domain name that they need, and it's a typical problem that every registrar or hosting company has a certain clientele in one country, but still you might occasionally an Asian registrar might then have a registration for European TLD that they need to deliver on, or an American registrar might have a registration for an Asian top-level domain. CentralNIC can make that every hosting company and every registrar in the world can access almost every TLD in existence. And last but not least, this is then completely independent of the TLD. We are also, we believe, the largest, if not then the second largest, domain name parking provider. So domain name parking is basically the process where we would put ads on your unused domain names and would then share a part of the revenue, of the advertising revenue that we generate with you, which then helps you to refinance the cost of the domain name until the time that you can actually develop that domain name. And very, very often, the process of starting companies starts with ideation. So we maybe start grabbing up 100 different domain names. You can put them into parking. They could make money for you, and then in the end, you decide for maybe one brand, and then 10 domains around it. And that's what we do with Parking Crew. And you can do that for any NTLD or any CCTLD or other GTLD that you want. And now I'm getting clear messages that I used up my time and should be respectful and hand over the mic to either Sophia or directly to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riddle. And I really agree with you that you mentioned that in the first round, actually, we see most of the applicants are from Europe and from the American companies. And because we participated in the first round, and there was only half year's awareness time to actually educating the Asian Pacific companies and organizations about new GTD programs. So I think this time we got enough time, and as a community, as also industry players, we need to work collaboratively, actually, to bring awarenesses also to more APAC companies and organizations. And as ZDNS is participating in a lot of events in different industries in China mainland, we trying to bring awarenesses to the CIOs and to the CMOs and even the CEOs, because they are going to be the decision-making parties, and actually to see whether they're participating in the subsequent round of DNS expansions. Okay, that's thank you for the insightful sharing, and then let's welcome the next speakers, Mr. Michael Fleming from GMO Security, Brand Security, and he's going to work us to the world of brand TLDs and best practices.
Thank you, Sophia. So this is definitely very exciting for me. Again, of course, this is my first time in Hong Kong. Believe it or not, I don't get the opportunity to talk about this in English very often, although I may look the part. I just push this way. Oh, the big button. Oh, right here. Wait, no. Oh, here we go. It's upside down. As it is, I usually do this in Japanese, and so it's quite a pleasure to be able to speak with everybody. It's also the first time I'm able to do this as GMO Brand Security. Some of you might know myself from a company called GMO Rights Consulting, but I would like to explain a little bit about our journey of changing our name to GMO Brand Security, tell you a little bit about our experience, about what we've done in the last round, as well as then going through some of the statistics, what happened, looking at some use cases, and how first-timers that are looking to apply for the second round can think about that. So first of all, it's actually really interesting. A lot of the discussion I heard about this morning really talked about the aspect of trust. Trust within these emerging technologies, the DNS. You just had a session in here that talked about security. And I can't be more excited to tell you about what I think to be the greatest company name in the world, GMO Brand Security. We actually decided to go from supporting brands with rights to delivering security for all brands. Why, you might ask? Last year, GMO Internet Group, who you probably heard about a little bit about, GMO is one of the largest internet conglomerates within Japan. Our foreign brand is under Z.com for you Americans. And last year, we made a huge decision to establish a security division. As such, GMO Brights Consulting decided to commit everything we know to GMO brand security. There's a lot in the works that I can't share exactly with you, but I can tell you that new and exciting things are coming out from our company. So joining the GMO security division, we also have GlobalSign, who is one of the largest SSL providers in the world, who deliver cryptographic security, as well as GMO Cybersecurity by, this is a little difficult to pronounce in English, but it's Irai. It's Ierai in Japanese, a little bit easier to pronounce. But we deliver holistic security under the slogan of a safe and secure internet for all. So how do we do this? What is brand security, to be exactly? Well, many of you have probably heard about, trademarks, domain names. We need to secure and establish intellectual property rights for brands. Once we have done that, we can actively go online, monitor, and see where the DNS abuse is. Where is the brand abuse? After that, of course, you also have to have a holistic strategy, guidelines for operating a brand, and of course, you need to manage all of that data. So, let's talk about new GTLDs. How many of you have heard of a new GTLD? All right, there's a couple of you. And that's even better if you haven't, because I'm actually talking to you today. A new GTLD, my colleague Michael just shared as well. 10 years ago, well, I say 10 years ago because 10 years ago in 2012, we saw the expansion of the internet and now have a lot more TLDs, a lot more extensions, a lot more opportunities to secure a domain name. We have this in .gmo, .shop, and .tokyo. A great example here, and I wish I had a pointer as well, but is our company URL is actually now brandsecurity.gmo. .gmo, a nice 3 letters. It is not what they say in America. This stands for Global Media Online. But it's a very exciting time to be alive. So when we think about the GTLD space, many of you have heard of the legacy TLDs. I call these the .coms, the .nets, the CCTLDs, .jp, .cn. But then we also have these new GTLDs. 10 years. They don't seem so new anymore. All the same, there are plenty of options, .tokyo, .shop, and then a bit more of a niche area called brand TLDs. This is the opportunity I'm focusing on speaking for you today. So what's a brand TLD? Let's think about this in terms of real estate. If you rent an apartment, raise your hand. None of you rent an apartment. All the same, if you rent an apartment within a building, you can think of that in terms of the second level domain. But when we focus on a brand TLD, you can now own the building as well. The possibilities are actually endless. Of course, this chain, we have to think about the hierarchical structure within the domain name system. So for many, a registry is the one that is in charge of the TLD. A registrar is the one that is the agent for the domain names. And then normally, for what most companies have, is the second level domain where you are the registrant. Initially, within the new GTLD program, there were about 1,930 applications. And we just saw this graphic a minute ago, but of course the majority of applications came out of North America and Europe, and 300 out of Asia. I still think that is quite a success, because when I look at success, I don't look at the number of TLDs or the number of domain names, I look at the quality of it. ICANN at that time established several categories such as community TLDs, geo TLDs, IDN TLDs, and then lumped everything else into an other or just a generic TLD category. Thankfully, in the midst of the applications, ICANN was able to establish or we were able to establish the category of brand TLDs through it was a contractual amendment with ICANN. Currently, there's about 1,241 new GTLDs that are delegated. Of these, about 500 are brand TLDs. That is a significant amount, even though we have lost some within there. But I want to show you a little bit about the elements about what is necessary for running for a TLD. You can kind of think about this as an external position as well as an internal position. Externally, well, first of all, you have to apply for a new GTLD. This is your purpose. You need to just demonstrate your financial capability, and you also need to have the technical aspect. We look at this in the back end. And then there's also the front end, of course. For many, they don't know how to work with ICANN or with how to work with a registrar. This is what the front end will take care of all of this for you. And then most importantly for companies, this is the hard part. It's the internal area. You need to have the infrastructure. You need to have the synergy. Everyone in the company needs to be on the same page when you go into this. You obviously need to have a strategy for how you're going to use it. And this last part is most important. I call it the backing, because most companies that have been successful with utilizing their brand TLD have had a top-down influence. They've had somebody from the chief suite that's been able to support them in utilizing it. So this is, again, just a little bit of my PR. GMO Internet is able to deliver one-stop TLD support. Through GMO Brand Security, we do the application writing, we act as the registrar, and of course, all the necessary front-end management, and of course, the strategy area. Our sister company, GMO Registry, offers all of the necessary technical support. And we do have quite a bit of street cred here. I'm sure some of you have seen some of these brands before. PlayStation, one of my favorites growing up, and Sony, of course. And we've got 40 here and also many more. So now I'm going to take this in a different direction. When you start to think about the possibilities for a brand TLD, most people are probably limited to the aspect of a domain itself, a domain name. And what is a domain name? Usually it's just tied to a website, right? Actually, we are living in exciting times right now. The aspect of blockchain, NFT domains, AI, there's many emerging technologies. What would you do if I told you that you could use the brand TLD to tie to all of these? It's a little bit difficult to think about, but in many of the ways that you can use an NFT domain for blockchain, you can also use a brand TLD with DNS. Right now, the majority of usage is focused on four main areas. There's much usage in strengthening brand power. Many brand TLDs have been able to use their brand in order to increase inner branding. It allows companies to actually have better governance internally. Most companies initially applied just to protect themselves on the top level, so there's the aspect of brand protection. But there is also the added caveat that I have seen some brand TLDs, or some of those brands with the brand TLDs that have begun reducing their existing domain name portfolio. And more important than anything is the increased security. When you begin to focus everything and centralize your brand, your online presence towards your brand TLD, it becomes recognized by your end users. And it makes it more difficult for third parties to abuse your brand. So I am a little biased since I'm doing this for many Japanese brand TLDs, and so I'm focusing mainly on those examples. But there's been quite a lot of brands that have been utilizing this for their main corporate site. They've organized a lot of their group company to be directly under their brand TLD. They've launched product sites, new service sites, as well as done a lot of different campaign examples. So just two examples, just two small case studies I wanted to concentrate on. Canon was one of the early adopters as a brand TLD. They changed their main corporate site over to global.canon. And also taken a lot of, I'm not gonna say a lot, but some of the newer companies that they've actually acquired are being structured under a .canon domain, such as in medical.canon. There's also service sites they're developing for image.canon. Sharp is probably one of my favorites. Why? Because it's such a generic name. Not only in the sense of being a word, but as well as with the brand. Sharp obviously is a generic name, so it makes it very difficult to acquire the exact match of the domain name that a lot of brands want to do for .com or within CCTLDs. So their guidelines, their actual usage has been very sporadic. However, with .sharp, however, though, they've actually been able to transition a lot of their, sorry, not a lot, but they've actually started developing 9 country sites within Asia, such as jp.sharp. The benefits and opportunities of a brand TLD are endless. You can look at it what those have already done in terms of security, web architecture, better branding, shortened URLs, but you can also look at this as a blank canvas. I always use the example that most brands that got started initially in the early 90s, their current infrastructure is so complex under their past domain names, and the subdomain records, the DNS records they have are in the hundreds to thousands under one domain name. A .brand is a blank canvas. While you may not want to transition everything off of the old canvas, look that we're already 10 years with plenty of usage of new GTLDs. This is an opportunity to build new infrastructure. It's an opportunity to serve as a platform for innovation. So let's talk lastly about how to prepare. Now, there's no promises, but ICANN has said that they're looking towards 2026. I remember a good friend told me that right after Chinese New Year, when we're all sitting in front of our desks, we'll have the opportunity to sit and concentrate on applications. So perhaps Q2 in 2026, although 3 years away, that is still plenty of time to prepare. So how can you prepare internally? The best advice I can give for anybody that's looking to apply for a brand TLD is thinking about the current problems that your brand is facing. There's many ways that a brand TLD can serve as an opportunity to deliver new solutions for your internal issues. Once you've been able to identify the problems and possible solutions, now you're able to look at the business case. And if you have a clear business case, you can start bringing senior leadership on board. Now, externally, it's actually very simple to prepare because you've got great companies just like GMO, as well as CentralNIC, they're friends of ours as well, that are able to deliver the heavy lifting for you when you need to pick an RSP and a registrar. The financial and the corporate documentation is rather simple as well. And when you work with an experienced partner that has plenty of street cred and has done this many times over, it's easy to develop strategy and to write your application. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael, for the informative speech. Also give us insights about the brands and the other type of TLD as well. I think GMO is very successful operating also geo TLDs. Maybe in another occasion we can talk about that more, because I think there will be more geo TLDs also from the APAC region. And I really agree with him on the comments that applying a TLD is easy, but utilizing actually make it worth it, and also make credits in a corporation, that's a very difficult task. And as I also focusing 10 years in industry to helping the ZDNS clients also operating their TLDs, I really agree that needs a lot of collaborative effort also from the organizations to actually make it happen. And I hope during our awareness campaign from ICANN, and also we can bring more cases, more best practices also to the APAC region, and that organization understand and actually how to use a TLD after they applied. So up next is our speakers from CNIC, which is the registry from CNCTLD. Let's welcome Kathy Zhang. He's DNS operator and engineering for CNIC, and he will introduce the CNIC's operation, and also from the technical perspective to talk about what's the impacts of DNS expansions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Casey from CNIC. CNIC is NIR of China, and the registry of ccTLD.cn and .zhongguo, which means China in Chinese. It's my honor to speak here, and I'm very glad to share my topic with you. Today, I'm going to talk about operations of .cn. The aim of this presentation is to introduce root server instances in China, operations statistics of .cn, and new GTLD services in CNIC. First, I'd like to introduce the status of root server instances in China. Until December 2022, there are 24 root server Anycast instances in total in China. Half of them are hosted by CNIC and distributed in several provinces in China. CNIC has requested 12 root server instances since 2006. And these 12 instances include 5 distinct identifiers, which are FIGKL. This figure shows that the average round-trip time from monitors in China to the 13 root servers is about 91 milliseconds. And the RTT is in the range of 12 milliseconds to 197 milliseconds. As you can see, the 5 root servers, FIGKL, which have instances in China, have shorter RTT. According to the statistics above, and to achieve the goal of reducing RTT of root DNS service, we attempt to request more root server instances in China recent years. And based on current distribution of existing instances, we'd like to request new ones to cover provinces that hasn't gotten an instance yet. For example, the west of China. Another factor to request more is to request more root server identifiers. There are only 5 distinct root server identifiers in China now, and we are trying to request an instance of M root server this year. More distinct root server identifiers will help make less queries to instances outside China, furthermore, less the RTT. Next, I'd like to turn to .cn server instances deployment. Like root DNS servers, .cn also use Anycast technology to deploy instances around the world. .cn have more than 40 instances now, about 50% of which are inside China, which distribute in 14 provinces. The overseas instances cover all of the 5 continents, including 3 countries in Asia, 7 in Europe, 2 in America, 1 in Oceania, and 1 in Africa. In order to provide faster DNS service, we are going to deploy more instances. The 2 main factors that influence the location choice are to cover national internet backbone street points and to cover provinces that has no instances yet. We prefer to choose IDCs with more bandwidth, higher safety level, and better data exchange ability. Besides the IDC's own conditions, located in cities with national internet backbone street points may provide network service of higher quality, speed up the network, and supply more bandwidth. There are 22 such cities in China until April 2023, and we've deployed instances in about 14 of them. Next, we'll try to cover more such cities. Another intent is to lower the network latency of provinces with no instance. During the next 3 years, we'll deploy no less than 10% instances in these provinces. page 10. Okay. Then I would now, yes. Then I would now like to move on to operation statistics of .cn, concretely the IPv6 services of CNIC. CNIC provides IPv6 DNS services since 2004 and gradually provides SRS, RDDS, and homepage services through IPv6 network. In 2011, about 12 years ago, we only have 3 IPv6 instances in 10, and 2 IPv6 NS address for A and D.DNS.cn. There is only 1 IPv6 domain registered, while the QPH for RDDS and the homepage is very low. With the development of IPv6 during the past years, the IPv6 services of CNIC has changed markedly. We'll attach an IPv6 address to each name server this year and increase the portion of dual stack instances up to 60% this year. Per domain name registration, we have more than 210,000 of domain names that have IPv6 name servers. The access to RDDS and homepage service has increased extremely too. From the registration point of view, the number of and the percentage of IPv6 NS address increased since 2010. We can see there is obvious increment since 2018. And in the right figure, here is approximate about the increment of IPv6 domain names. The increasing trend is similar. From the queries point of view, here are statistics of queries from more than 2 million IPv6 addresses to .cn DNS service. As to RR types of IPv6 DNS queries of .cn, top 6 are the same as IPv4. The RR type requested most is 4A from IPv6 network, which means name mapping to IPv6 address. While the RR type requested most is A from IPv4 network. This result is reasonable. Both domestic and overseas instances receive IPv6 queries, and there are more domestic IPv6 users for .cn. For the overseas part, most queries are from Asia. The portion reflects the locations of domain name users and the development of IPv6 network to some extent. Last, I'd like to introduce new GTLD services in CNIC briefly. CNIC acts as both registry and backend registry operator of .公司, which means company in Chinese, and .网络, which means network in Chinese. CNIC is also the BRO of .Guangdong, which is the name of Guangdong province in Chinese, and .Foshan, which is the name of the city Foshan in Chinese. So we could provide the 5 critical registry functions as BRO officially since January 2014. There are about 20 DNS service instances used for new GTLDs. And 3 IDCs in 2 cities are used for the other 4 services, which are SRS, RDDS, data escrow, and DSSEC. Besides BRO, CNIC also acts as a DEA for registry and registrar data. The data are stored in both local and remote data center. CNIC is one of the 3 EBROS 2, which is an emergency service for new GTLD. With TMCH, the above 4 services are essential for new GTLDs, and CNIC support all these services. Finally, I will summarize the topic. Here are 3 main conclusions. First, the number of the number and distribution of root instances has the effect on access latency. It's the first step in DNS, so CNIC keeps on trying to request more instances for China. Second, with the development of IPv6 network and its basic requirement of new GTLD application, the upgrade of DNS, SRS, RDDS services, etc. to support IPv6 is necessary. And to prepare for new GTLD's application, a registry could run as a BRO on his own, or find a hosted one to provide these services on behalf of him. The latter choice will save human cost for operation and determines a DEA at the application phase is required too. This is the end of my speech. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Kathy. And so his speech will be delivered virtually. And then he will discuss about the topic expanding TLDs in APAC, what's the opportunities for digital transformations. Is technical ready to put Mr. Hosens online?
Hello.
Let's give a few seconds.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. So can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you, Sophia. So I'm going to present my slide first. I think you all can see the slides, right? Hello, can you just share me that my slide is okay and my voice is okay?
Yes,
can
you
you
are
confirm?
fine. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. And sorry that I could not make it happen in person. This is Imran Hussain. We are working from Bangladesh as a web hosting company, and our company is EY Host Limited. So today I'm going to sharing some insights about the next opportunity of the APAC region for the GTLDs. So I think my previous speakers already delivered about the TLDs and GTLDs programs, how it's happened. So I will skip these two slides. So we are APAC peoples who are living in this APAC region and who are doing business and for this global industry, and we are also as an end user. When we talk with this end user, we see there is a lot of opportunity, and it's actually very growing market this in here. So I will say that this digital area, APAC is going very well. So it's very rapidly transforming the digital areas. Like if I talk about our country, from Bangladesh, we see that we are rapidly growing every sector in APAC in digital area. So I would say that the new GTLDs will help us. So for our APAC companies, it will help us to make our presence online, and we will believe that the new GTLDs program will help us very well to have our own TLDs and own languages. If I say about the population, everyone knows that there is 60% people we live in the in APAC region. So there is a lot of opportunity and there is a lot of use case here. But unfortunately, the TLD's operation and the TLDs last year, you already seen the previous speakers said that we from the APAC region there was 300 three applications was for GTLDs, new GTLDs, but there was a lot of opportunity. But this time I would say we will make something different from APAC. So there is a lot of opportunity and there is unique demands here. So I will go the next opportunity, like financial and business relationship. Like if we say that we are working in same region, so there is a lot of financial relationship within this APAC region, and we are actually, when we do some business in, like we are working with, like if I say some example, like from Bangladesh, we are very closely working with India, China, Singapore. So this region has some good bondings as like other businesses. Like we do physical products, like that business is growing very well in regionally. So I would say that this GTLDs also help us to make our own relationships. Like if we have our own TLDs, so we can do some better things. And like I will say that the regional relationship for the in terms of the financial connectivity and financial relationship, it will help us very well. So this is very important things, like the linguistic potential. So if we say that English is not a very well spoken language in this APAC region, but still we are using English for all domains. So, but you see that we have many languages that is that we are speaking in in Bangladesh, or like we have Bangla language, but this Bangla language well spoken. Like if we see all other countries, Bengali peoples is living everywhere. So Bangla is very common and popular languages this APAC region. And if we see China and Hindi language, so it's like there is a lot of opportunity here for the language perspectives. So I can see that is the next opportunity for us. Like when we have our own TLDs with our own languages, so it will help us to, like we can gather a lot of untapped market and untapped peoples and communities that are not using the domains. So when they will see that their own languages domain TLDs is available, so they will go for this own languages TLDs. So this has a lot of opportunity for us. So if I say the timeline, so I checked the recent statistics, like the last ICANN 76 meeting, there was adopted 98 recommendation by ICANN board. So and it's already begun. So and I think the sub-pro implementation team is also helping the ICANN So it will ready for us very soon to apply for our own GTLD. So we from our region we will be ready, and we are also from the community. We are helping the ICANN also to ready the next round. So now if I see our preparation, so I already said that we are already engaging the community already from our community, our APAC region, and we are very active, and we are directly helping to the the Sapro team and ICANN board. So very soon the next TLD will next round will be available for us. So I would request from our region all stakeholders, they should also come to the next. They should apply for the next round GTLDs, and obviously we will get more TLDs for our APAC, and this next round will be very helpful for us to get more next TLDs, and I am attending last few years the ICANN meetings, and I see that APAC peoples are and APAC companies are very active. So this is very good sign for us to have our own TLDs. This is my last slide. So I would like to conclude my expectation and my hope that very soon we will get our own TLDs for our own market, and as a hosting company, we will able to sell the local language TLDs in our own region, and we can make some like the 60% people are living here. So if there is minimum 30%, we can make them all be online. So it will very helpful for us to to make a good digital area, and we can hear them also from this way. So I would say that obviously we will be like that, will not be the top, but from the APAC region we will be the have the best application from our APAC side for the next GTLD program. And thank you very much. So if you have any questions, so I think there is next few minutes we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Imran. I think that's after speeches from four experts. Then you might have some questions that want to addressed, and we will have about 20 minutes left to address any question from the audience. And now I will invite all the speakers here, and also Imran, can you stay online? So then we can do a Q&A sections. Sure. And this we need another. We need another one. No, oh yeah, this for one. Cool. Yeah. Please, Kathy. So, any questions from the audience that that you want to ask the panelists? You can raise your hands. Yes, please.
Hi, John from the AI Foundation for the record. Yes. Thanks everyone for their presentations. So 2 questions. When is your estimate for the next round? I've seen mentions on 2026 Q2 that you were in your slides. How accurate is that? Is it really going to happen on 2026 Q2, or is it just your estimate? And how much do you think is going to be the average bidding for each of one of those new TLDs, the cost for the submission? Because I'm thinking we see a lot of big companies who are going to be bidding, but what about smaller organizations or smaller entrepreneurs who may not have the ability to actually bid for NTLD? What would be your consideration on that regard? Thanks.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so Michael Fleming here. As I kind of posted that on my slides, I can actually say, how confident am I in 2026 Q2? I'm actually very optimistic. However, that is not my estimation. That was actually put out there by ICANN and the last meeting in Washington, D.C., which is actually, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks ago. Yeah, about 3 weeks ago. And in terms of cost, and you're probably aware, but ICANN actually released that I think they were saying somewhere between $240 and $275 or so. This is a hefty price tag for a new gTLD, and I understand that a lot of companies out there probably don't see the merit in regard to that cost. However, I can also say that there's a lot of examples of smaller companies such as .wir. Is it, you're the German, right? Am I pronouncing it correctly? .wir. Yeah. There's company. Like us. Yeah, there's a lot of companies smaller companies out there that you would think probably wouldn't jump at this opportunity, but actually were one of the first innovators with the brand TLD, because although originally back in 2012 it was $180, and again it's a $25,000 yearly cost, these are the same companies that have actually changed over their entire infrastructure to the .brand, which for them it's working perfectly in terms of all the aspects that I shared with during my slides.
Right, and just to add to that, I think for a very long time there was the presumption that the application cost would actually come down from $180,000 for the first round. In particular, given that ICANN also had some ideas how to make the application process or the approval process more efficient. But now we see inflation rates in line with many other goods, raising the bar. And of course, in this market, or in this for this type of product, there are 2 views to it. One is a cost-based approach, basically just recovering your cost. But there might also be a reason to just set a high bar, to not have an inflation of new top-level domains, and just have people being very serious about their plans before they actually submit an application. Last thing here is, if however properly executed, I mean we see that Verisign as the one public company in the sector has a double-digit billion US dollar valuation. If you would have a really successful project and you could only nibble away a fraction of a % of that, it's very well worthwhile the $240,000 investment.
Okay, just adding to those 2 gentlemen's comment. Actually, one thing I believe that ICANN has an applicant support program that will have some criteria to support the potential applicants from the underdeveloped country. And with that criteria will be published with ICANN's before the programs started. And second, it's about I talking to some of the companies and organizations we work together, and they seem to also criticize the high bars of the application fee. But and I see that if you're applying for a generic string, if you have a good idea, you can actually have business. The company I work with the generic strings, most of them are the worst scenario is making events. Actually, they don't lose money. They actually if you operates operates correctly, and you have a good team, and you can actually make it as a very successful business. Even though if you don't really want to continue with that TLD operations, if you sell to another organizations, you can get the money back. So that's reality, right, in the practice at the moment. Yeah.
I will just add one thing, and it's no promises, and I can't say, there's only so much I can say, but if there are questions about those who are a little bit scared of the price but are still interested in, speak with me afterwards. GMO has some ideas on making things affordable.
That's good to know.
And maybe 2 more points to this. So yes, there is an aftermarket for top-level domains. So for example, I'm a partner in a company called ShortDot, which I founded with my friend Lars Jensen, and we've actually acquired 5 .brands like .icu, .bond, which was for the Bond University in Australia, and 3 others. And this you can always do, and it will happen. It will continue to happen with existing new top-level domains, and it will probably also happen to new top-level domains being delegated after the second round. The one question that I could not answer now, and I'm not sure whether ICANN has already a position on this, is what kind of conflict resolution there will be if they're conflicting applications. So in the last round, actually quite a few people made much more money from auctioning off the applications than the buyer made from later operating them. And I think the availability of for-profit conflict resolution will be one of the main factors that will determine whether there will be what the total number of applications will be in the second round.
Yeah, that's just one of the topics that's discussed heavily in the community, which is dragging on the timeline. And then we really hope that we can collaborate as a youth community to bring it forward. And I really like to see it before 2012, next year maybe, if that's possible.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
That would be awesome. All right. I hope that answered your questions. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. Do we have more hand raised for questions? Nope. Okay. I have actually one question. Yeah. So Accentronic is based in Europe and based in UK, and also have a global outreach in different regions. And GMO is focusing Japan and APAC, Asia, and also have other. And ZDNS is focusing in China, and we help a lot of Chinese company to participate in the second round. Can you maybe use a one word, 2 words, and to say what would be the best demands from your region? What will be the demands from your region in terms of the company that applies, and also in terms of strengths? The most you see from requests from your customers. Yeah. What will be the trends for the next round, in general speaking? Yeah, if you could start, Mick.
Well, given that I sit next to you, Sophia, I'll start. So, first of all, Accentronic is a completely global business with offices from New Zealand to the Canadian West Coast, if I just follow the sun. So we don't really have a very strong geographical focus. 42% of our revenue comes from the United States, even though we have most of the staff in Europe. So applicants from any country in the world will be eligible. We will happy to help any customer wherever they have their registered office. And I think the creativity for strings for next round will hopefully be limitless, just like it has been in the last round. And as we know, there's still enough space. So there are 17,767, I think, 3-letter combinations only. Only 70 out of these have been registered in the first round, which means that more than 99% are still available for the second round. And then there's, of course, even more combinations with longer strings. So the sky is the limit.
Okay,
Thank you, Sophia, for the question. It's interesting, as Michael's said, CentralNIC is, as far as the sun sets, and myself from the land of the rising sun itself, as well as us and our many partners throughout Asia. It's a funny question when thinking about it. The brands that I have spoken with are probably brands many of you haven't even heard of that are actually interested in a brand TLD for the next round. And the reason being is what I was sharing with you earlier, specifically because much of the real estate or much of the prime real estate, such as in .com or even .net, or the more well-known top-level extensions, has already been taken. And in their mind, we're focusing on the future. With how many of you heard about ChatGPT a year ago?
I think everybody.
No, a year ago.
Oh, a year ago.
A year ago, nobody.
Nobody.
There's well, I'm sure a few of you, but in that time alone, ChatGPT has become almost a household name, and there were many doubters that the next round of the new GTLDs, they're not going to be successful. Well, in terms of the actual generic TLDs, that might be the case, but when we look at it the aspect of brands, 10 years is just a speck within the history. It's within the future of that we're seeing, and change can happen overnight. So a lot of the demand that I see is from newer companies, and let's think about it in terms of blockchain. There's been a lot of NFT domains that have come from providers such as Unstoppable, Handshake, and this is competing space that really is a big question of what ICANN is going to do for the next round. One of the questions I've always had is, how will these providers look at the next round, the next opportunity to apply for new GTLDs? Will they be securing the extensions or the top-level domains that they've created within their blockchain space? It's going to be an interesting round that we're going to be seeing, again, hopefully before 2026, but if ICANN is willing to commit to that, maybe by 2026.
Just because you mentioned ChatGPT, it's an excellent example why we need companies like GMO Brand Services or our brand shelter, because many of you might not know that actually ChatGPT.com is not owned by OpenAI, but by a company in Puerto Rico who was just quicker than them than registering. So just remember, the right process is first register your domain name, then register the trademark, then launch your product. No changes to that rule.
And adding to Michael's point, the AI.com is trading for over $11 billion, right? So if you look at that, interestingly, I use a lot in different occasions when I talk to the Chinese companies. And then if they ask questions, what's the ROI? I would tell them, then what's the ROI on AI.com then? If you're investing on the TLD and you have the opportunity to utilize all the second-level domains freely, and in Chinese we said that you realize the freedom of domains, right? That's the Chinese saying, we realize the freedom of everything. And that actually, organizations actually understand that easily. And then there's another thing I want to say. When I talk to the outsiders from the industry, I try to make it use a language that it's just numbers and brands and that the language they can understand. And we are so much into our domain world that we use a lot of acronyms and we use a lot of terms that explaining ICANNs, the industry. But what go down to the earth, what down to the bottom is that we need to understand what matters for organizations to actually make them to apply for TLDs, and that we need to understand their needs, their requirements, and what's the pain in their organizations, and actually to make the awareness more efficient and to send a message out. Yeah. All right. Do you have more comments from Kathy and Emron on that question? On my questions, what did you see the trend for the next round? And anything you want to add? Maybe from perspective
Sorry,
from India?
I just missed. Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, my question is, can you summarize use one or two sentences to describe what would be the trends for the next round from your region?
Obviously, there is few TLDs like I think I should not disclose, but I got few like words that might be comes in the next round. It's like the national things, like something about the national for like Bangladeshi, and maybe it would be the Indian. So that the keyword is like the national words would be the next round TLDs from our region. I already got few recommendations from few companies and few person already they're talking about, and they are actually preparing themselves for the next round.
Okay. Thank you.
And that obviously local language also. They're planning to having the TLDs in English and the local language.
Yes, the IDNs matters a lot in the second round. And we'll see more IDNs, more people using their own language just go online. If not anything adding from Kathy, that I will, the event has come to the end. And thank you for being us today in these discussions. I think we get a more comprehensive understanding of the development of the very important subject of the domain industry. And I would like to thank everybody for being here, and thank ICANN.org and HK IRC for co-hosting the events to give us opportunity to get together and exchange our perspective. And we thank for all the people participating and look forward to our next reunion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.